We learned a stat recently that you might be interested in hearing about.
Did you know that Social Security typically only replaces about 40% of your pre-retirement income?
Ah,
Right.
and there are some pretty big differences in payouts based on when you start taking Social Security.
So when can I or should I start taking my payments?
Well, as you might guess, there are a bunch of factors that go into play when answering that question for yourself.
And that's why you're listening to Queer Money episode 320, because today we're chatting about when and why you should start taking your Social Security payments.
So let's start crunching the numbers. Folks, you know that we love engaging with you, our listeners and our viewers. And after Queer Money episode number 314, when we interviewed Aaron Tax from Sage, and we talked about new Social Security benefits for same-sex partners, we got a lot of questions about Social Security. And you want to know what the number one question is?
Dun, 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 dun.
When should I start taking Social Security? Well, that is a hard and complicated question that we can't answer for you. We can give you some guidelines, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Ultimately, though, you want to talk to your financial planner or an accountant to figure out the best age for you and your circumstances. We want to give you a little bit of education here so you feel equipped to go in and have an intelligent conversation. So you pick the right age for you and your partner and maybe even your family, depending upon how or you're supporting them.
Right. And I'll add here that, when we start talking about retirement and Social Security, folks who are in their 20s and 30s might be rolling their eyes, but the reality is that the more planning you can do ahead to understand this kind of information, the biggest difference it's going to have when you actually do have to start taking your Social Security payments. The numbers can be widely different based on how well you've done your planning.
Well, and I'll add too that we're talking a lot about financial independence and retiring early, and there are a lot of people in the FIRE movement who are who are crunching their numbers for Social Security as early as their mid 30s.
Yeah.
So even if you are in your 20s or even early 30s, this is a conversation you want to start thinking about, because if you're planning on firing, some of these strategies might apply to you, and you want to think about that sooner rather than later, because as David said, the sooner you plan for it, the more opportunities that you have.
Right.
So when can I start taking my Social Security payments or my benefits? There's a word that you're going to need to know. It's boring and it's got an acronym to it. It's called full retirement age, or FRA. And that's the standard that the Social Security or IRS has decided is when you can start taking Social Security payments. Well, when does that apply to you? Well, of course, the IRS has to make things as complicated as possible.
It's the government.
So we can't answer that straight out for anybody. If you're born 1960 or later, your full retirement age or your FRA is age 67.
They've finally simplified it, right? We have one date and 1 year.
Easy squeezy, right? So, but if you're older, you've got a little bit more work to do. So if you're born between the ages, between the years of 1937 and 1960, your full retirement age is somewhere between the age of 65 and 67. Wow, there's a whole range in there, and there are a whole bunch of different months in there. So it's not exactly the age 65, could be age 65 and 2 months, age 66 and a half. Suddenly you're speaking in fractions like you're a 2-year-old again about how old you are. It's complicated, and we don't have the time, and you don't have the attention span for us to outline this for you. So we've saved you the hassle. Simply click on the show notes in your podcast player, and that will take you to a grid that we're going to put together for you that you can just pinpoint exactly when you reach full retirement age.
And we'll say here, if you were born before 1937 and you're listening to the podcast, well, first of all, more power to you. Thank you very much for listening, and send us your picture, because we want to put it on the side of a Smucker's jar like we are Good Morning America. I think it was Good Morning America that does that, right?
Exactly. All right. So that's the lowdown of what full retirement age is. And that's the language we're going to be using throughout the episode. For simplicity's sake, we're going to just assume that everybody is at the age of 67. Or everybody's full retirement age is the age of 67. If you don't fall into that category, we apologize. We want to try to keep this as simple as possible, so that you will have some additional variables to consider. But basically, the theories and the strategies will totally apply to you. But again, talk to your accountant. Right. So, David, when can benefits before? Can you take benefits before, during, or after you reach full retirement age?
You can. And that's the nice thing is full retirement age is kind of basically a suggested, right? This is the time period when we suggest, or the Social Security Administration suggests, that you have reached retirement age and you should start taking your Social Security benefits. One of the interesting things is there is a range as to when you can start taking those benefits. So some folks may want to be retired before they reach 67. I know I do. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's yeah, I can take it. When I reach, if I wanted to retire at 45 or 55, I can't take my Social Security benefits that early. There's actually a range, and so that range is really kind of basically a 10-year range. 5 years prior to when you reach full retirement, or 5 years after. So we're really looking at this range of between the ages of 62 to 72 as to when you can start taking your payments. Again, this applies to folks who were born after 1960. The difference between these here is when you reach full, or if you decide to start taking your payments on your birthday, when you reach 67, that's when you get your full retirement benefit. Anytime you take it before that, the amount that you get on your monthly paycheck or state payment from the Social Security Administration is actually reduced. And the closer you get to 62, or sorry, yes, to 62, the lower that payment is going to go. If you take it after 67, and the closer you get to 67, 72, the higher it's going to get. So basically, there is a small deduction when you take it early for every month you take it early, and there is a small credit for every month you take it later than that. So we're still really kind of looking at, again, this age range between 62 and 67, and for folks who are born after 1960. So everything we're going to be talking about, as John mentioned, is really kind of built around that, even when we talk about our personal examples here. So here's the example of what it would be like for me. If I decided to take my full retirement when I reach 60, or take my benefits when I reach 67, I would get $1,955. But if I went to the early side and I started taking them in 1962, I'm sorry, when I reached 62, then I would get $1,367. That is actually a 30% reduction from what I would get if I waited until full retirement age at 67. But then if I waited all the way until I was 72, I would get $2,424 a month. That's actually a bonus, or a credit of 24% more than had I started taking it at 67. And it's 77% more than what I would have gotten had I started taking it at 62. So you can really see this range here, right? It's a range for me personally. This is based on how much I've put in and how many credits I have, how much taxes I've paid into the system. It's a range between $1,367 and $2,424.
Now, for me, the situation is going to be a little bit different because I quit working for my W-2 considerably earlier than David did. So I wasn't receiving W-2 income, and we didn't get to the point in Debt Free Guys and the Career Money podcast where we were contributing to FICA up until a couple of years ago. Now, there's another variable that we have to play into here. I'm considerably younger than David, so I haven't had nearly as much time to contribute into the system. So that's why my skin looks so good. So when my full retirement age is 67, and if I wait to start receiving payments until my full retirement age, I would receive at this point $1,848. If I decide to take it early as when as soon as I turn age 62, my payment would be $1,300. That's down as well 30% from my full retirement age, similar to David. If I wait until I'm age 72 to take my Social Security payments, my payment would be, on a month-to-month basis, would be $2,292. Also, that's up 24% from my full retirement age payment, as well as 77% up from my payment if I were to start receiving payments at age 62. So again, a big range there, and it's as little as $1,300 if I start receiving payments at age 62, or as much as $2,292 $292 if I were to wait until I was age 72. Now, if I was older like David and how much more time to put into the system, those
Aw.
numbers would be inflated.
Now you might think to yourself, well, that actually sounds pretty good, right? At age 67, I'm going to get $1,955. Want you to keep this in mind when you're going to ssa.gov/my account and you're getting these numbers. That's actually where we got these numbers. So again, that's ssa.gov/my account. What they're giving is the projected amount that they think you will get at full retirement age based on the amount you have put in over that your earning lifetime up to this point. But that's what they project you would get in at full retirement age, right? So for me, that's 16 years out. I have 16 years until I reach full retirement age. So what $1,955 in today's dollars would be is considerably different. I did a quick calculation and I kind of assumed a rate of inflation of about 3%. I know that that's considerably lower than what is going on right now, but over history, over 10-year, 20-year time spans, inflation usually kind of sits between 2.5% to 3% a year. So I went with a little on the high side. If inflation was at 3%, that $1,955 would actually feel like $1,220 in today's dollars. I don't know about you, but I don't know anyone, no matter where you live in the country, who can live off of $1,220 a month. That kind of really pinpoints that comment that we made at the outset, that Social Security only replaces about 40% of your pre-retirement income. So it's important to take into consideration all of the factors that make up how much you're getting paid from Social Security, including the amount of money you might have from retirement savings.
Exactly. And this is why we go on and on about the need to continue to invest in the stock market, to consider getting into real estate investing, to consider having side businesses or your own businesses, because that Social Security payment is just simply not enough to live on, unless, of course, the government decides to change things altogether and we get fatter payments, but that's not likely to happen.
Right. Well, and I think one of the things that's important to remember is that the Social Security system was built as a safety net in case someone was not able to work, right? It wasn't designed as a retirement plan for folks. You know, when folks go to the circus, they don't go to the circus just to watch people fall into the net underneath the trapeze artist over and over and over again, right? The excitement is actually in the actual trapeze act, right? So that the circus was not designed for us watching people fall into a safety net. It's actually designed for us thriving. And that's what really the whole idea behind this was, to prevent folks from falling out of that.
And now I'm picturing men in tights flying in the air for some
Of course
reason.
you
I don't
are.
understand. So what are the pros and cons of taking your Social Security payments before you reach full retirement age? Why would anybody even want to do that if the payout's going to be so small? Well, there are a couple reasons why somebody might want to do that. One of the biggest factors is that you get to receive your Social Security payments for a longer period of time. If most people are projected to live between ages of 82, 85 years old today. So if you decide to start receiving Social Security payments at age 62, you have essentially 20 some plus years for you to receive all those payments on a month-to-month basis. That's pretty significant. Now, of course, the con is, of course, that you're receiving a smaller payment, and that might be a reason why somebody might decide to wait at least until age 67 or maybe even beyond that point.